Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
Voices of the alternative education movement. Be inspired by the voices of visionaries, changemakers, and ordinary, extraordinary people who do what they do, all for the love of learning.
This is For the Love of Learning, Voices of the Alternative Education Movement. I'm Lainey Liberty, and this is episode number 118. In tonight's show, we're going to explore the value of creating community for self-directed learners. What is community? Community is defined as a group of people who share common emotions, values, or interests, and are actively engaged in learning together and from each other. In addition, communities are collaborative in nature and serve a specific purpose. Members of an effective community should know what they wish to contribute as well as what they wish to receive. Generally speaking, the community values should align with individuals' values in order for it to work. Tonight we're going to explore the benefits of creating community for self-directed learners, also called Unschoolers, and share personal stories, challenges, and successes. So join us for what is going to be a wonderful conversation. So we've got a lot to talk about and an amazing panel to explore these ideas with. So I'm anxious to jump right in, but first I'm going to read each of our panelists' bios. But I want to remind our audience that you can find out more about each of our guests on the show notes page located at fortheloveoflearningshow.com, and look for the show notes page for episode number 118. There you will find more information about each of our panelists and links to their projects and websites. So join me in welcoming Jim to tonight's panel. This is Jim's first appearance on the show, but he's a friend to the show for several years and has appeared on several episodes of our spin-off show, Youth Subjects on the World, and actually is co-producing on that show now. So at first glance, Jim's career may seem scattered across different fields and topics. However, an emerging theme he's noticed in his work is to empower people who are powerless. This may sound cliche, so let's make it more specific. Jim wants to unlock doors and liberate people who are trapped inside. More specific, he wants to help students trapped in school, elderly people trapped in nursing homes, psychiatric patients trapped in institutions, and inmates trapped in prisons. To achieve these lofty goals, Jim brings many skills to the table. For example, he's an experienced startup entrepreneur, trained biomedical engineer, strong public speaker, self-taught web developer, self-satisfying comedian, eccentric physics teacher, and mediocre painter. To keep himself sane, he likes reading, rock climbing, skateboarding, and traveling. While he doesn't mind fighting alone, success requires a team. That's why he's all for coordinating efforts to create a better world. So welcome to tonight's panel, Jim.
Thanks, it's good to be here.
And next, I'd like to welcome For the Love of Learning veteran and guest host Sue back to the show. Sue, wife and mom to 3 grown homeschoolers, began their home education journey in 1996 when they discovered schools were not going to be a good fit. After 20 years of helping families around the world and connecting with other parents in person and online, Sue continues to share her insights and experiences with the homeschooling unschooling community in a variety of ways. A homeschooling coach and unschooling mentor, Sue works with parents who are frustrated with their current educational approach. She provides the information they are looking for and helps them create a homeschooling plan that will actually work. To find out more about working with Sue, please visit SuePatterson.com. And if you're a new homeschooler, she has created a special support mentoring program tailored just for the new folks called Chaos to Confidence. In October 2015, Sue published a book, Homeschool Teens. And if you have fear about the teen years, you'll want to read what 75 young people have to say about their lives. Lots of projects to talk about. Welcome back to the panel, Sue.
Thanks, Lainey, for having me back.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure. Next, I'd like to introduce Addison. Addison has been attending the HSC conference for longer than he could remember and is a senior member of the Teen Conference Committee. For the past few years, he has been studying the craft novel writing and is in the process of writing his own science fiction novel right now. He plays video games occasionally, though that interest has been dying down recently, and he spends a large amount of time reading books in his comfy chair, which is right behind him, or riding his bike around town. Addison is not sure what to do with the rest of his life, but that's cool. He will abide. Welcome to tonight's panel, Addison.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
You're very welcome. And next, I'd like to welcome Candy. Candy is a busy unschooling mom to a 14-year-old Jessie, formerly Finn. Jessie only spent around 6 months in the public school system before they realized it definitely was not a fit for them. They've been unschooling ever since. They are located in Central Florida, and at first it seemed as if there were no other unschoolers to be found in that area. They found a wonderful group on the West Coast, but it was too difficult to consistently drive 2.5 hours each way to meet with the group. They tried several local homeschool groups, but it was never a great fit for their family. So Candy and Jessie founded Tabletop Teens, a group where unschooling teens could gather and play all sorts of tabletop and RPG games together. Jessie also has a love for marine science conservation, so Candy also founded Aquanautics, an all-ages group focusing on hands-on field work with scientists. In 2017, along with her spouse Robert and Jessie, they started the Free Schoolers organization an unschool cooperative where teens or adults could teach classes. These classes were offered free of charge to unschoolers in the area. With Jesse's increasing interest in marine science and conservation, Free Schoolers was becoming too difficult to manage time-wise, so they consolidated all their clubs and cooperatives into one organization support group, Majestically Awkward Fun Schoolers. Here, Candy and Jesse plan field trips, citizen scientist trips, and events for over 350 members around the state of Florida. She also encourages other parents and teens to organize trips and clubs for Majestically Awkward. They are still evolving and growing rapidly, but are having a blast along the journey. Candy and Jesse have co-created and managed several other teen groups that reflect Jesse's interests, including cosplay, a special effects group, philosophy, religion group, international cooking and culture club, and a D&D fake core group. So that's a lot of stuff. Welcome, Candy, to tonight's panel.
Thank you for having me, Lainey. I'm very excited to be here.
Me too, and I'm so glad the power issues are resolved too.
Me too.
And finally, you may have noticed I have somebody sitting next to me. This is Miro, my son, who is on tonight's panel. Oftentimes he co-hosts with me, but tonight he's actually a panelist. So I'd like to introduce my son, Miro, to tonight's panel. Miro is an 18-year-old traveler and youth facilitator for Project World School. His learning is self-directed and influenced by the ever-changing world around him. To him, this is world schooling. He is interested in and is an advocate for children's rights, travel as education, and a spearhead for the world schooling movement that he and his mother helped create. Miro traveled to Amsterdam in April of 2016 to present at the TEDx Amsterdam Education Conference to bring a slightly more unconventional view to the table. In 2017, Miro was selected as one of 60 youth to attend the Youth Global Changemakers Summit in Switzerland based on his activism surrounding alternative education. I added that, did you notice? Miro aspires to bring cultural awareness and immersion to more people because he truly believes that travel can bring peace to the world and inspire learning without measure. So welcome, darling.
Thanks for having me.
So Miro, we'll start with you. Let's talk, tonight's panel is about community. Why don't you share with us how community plays a role in what you do in your case with Project World School?
Well, I think community is one of the most important aspects that a learner can use in their learning path. And I say that because, speaking from personal experience, for me, it's always been, I've always been capable of learning things, and I've always been capable of doing that. For the first few years of our trip, I struggled a lot with the community aspect. I didn't really have that same support that you would find from a community structure. And so in those years, I was still learning, I was still pursuing my interests, but it actually made it a lot more difficult because it felt like it was something that I was pursuing solely on my own. And it felt like something that I had to kind of push to actually learn the things that I was going to learn anyways. But I feel like once you have the support of a community or a group of people that share similar interests, or not even share similar interests, but support one another in their learning process, that is huge. That's really huge. And so with Project World School, that's kind of what we intend to do. We mix that aspect, we mix that element with cultural immersion and with exploration. And that's really big for, especially the adolescent learner. That's a big time of discovering their life, and they're figuring out where they fit into the world. And so we try and mix those two elements, and that's how we try and create community. So community is important. It's huge.
And we'll talk a little bit later about what it means to be a facilitator and a community member and how those roles balance. But thank you for that. I want to jump over to Candy next because Candy, you focus primarily working with teens, but also inspired, all of the work that you do is also inspired by the needs of your son. And you can tell that my son and I work together based on that relationship as well. So share with us what it means to build community, create community, hold space for community, and do all the organizing first, and the role that plays in your life.
All consuming. Basically, it is an all consuming job, and basically my son and I are very close, and we just sit down and we have many conversations about different things that he enjoys. And as his likes and dislikes evolve and things that he wants to learn about change, I find different things for us to go and do and try to encourage, him to learn as much as possible in the different fields. And as far as the community is concerned, I feel like, for a long time we did a lot of things on our own, and it was okay. But I think kind of like, where Miro was coming from, it's a lot nicer when you do have that community support behind you, and you have people that you can enjoy doing things with. It means a whole lot more. So we decided together, we've created a lot of different groups. We've created a lot of different clubs, and it's really blossomed in this area. It was something here in Central Florida that we needed, because we don't really have anything that, I guess, centers around unschooling. We have a lot of homeschooling groups, but not really any unschooling groups. So we just go around and try to plan as many things as we can, focused on the things that my son enjoys, and then his friends come in and we plan things that they enjoy as well, and we encourage other parents and other members of our community to step in and do the same. And we've grown really fast.
Yeah, I was going to say, a community of 350 people, and that's in real life. I mean, an online community of 350 people, okay, that's manageable, but in real life, Candy, there's probably like crazy logistics that you have to wrap your head around.
It is. It can be very overwhelming and very difficult. I have a couple of moms that are some of my best friends that I've made out of this whole, I guess, this whole project, and they help me. They're my support, and all the moms in the group, really, and even the dads, they're very supportive. They help a lot. I broke my leg recently. I broke all the bones in my ankle and my shin, and so I'm completely immobile. I can't put any weight on it. I can't drive, and I am the one that organizes most of the things that we do. And it's been amazing and overwhelming, the amount of support that I've had from our group, the people that have stepped up. They've helped. They've, taken over different trips for me. They've come and gotten my child or other kids that I usually school bus around, just to make sure that they're still, getting what they need, even though I'm not able to give that to them right now. So it's been very, very overwhelming, and it touches my heart, to know that the community is so tight-knit and people, step up and want to support each other.
Candy, I don't want to say it's great that you broke your ankle, not at all.
No, that's not great.
But it's great to actually see like a community step up to the plate when somebody has that need, and that's like heartwarming. And I'm so sorry about your ankle. Oh my gosh.
It's okay. But yeah, it is very heartwarming, and yeah, we do have over 350 people in real life. They're all over the state, because we do field trips all over the state, and it's every field trip or every event that we plan, usually we get between 30 and 50 kids that go. So it can be quite a task to try to get everything organized, get everything ready, but we do it, and my son helps me a lot, and I have a lot of other helpers in our little tight-knit community.
Wow, would it be cool if I just told everyone on my website to move to Florida to be near you?
Sure. Absolutely. You can share our information with anybody that you want. It's a wonderful community, and they're always there to support each other, online and in real life. So it's an amazing group of kids and parents.
I think it's awesome that you've done so much as an in-person community, because the work that I've done, at least in the unschooling world, is building digital community. And for me, I've kind of got like my own experiences with community, some online communities and some face-to-face communities. And I'm always trying to find ways of like how to bridge the internet community and extend that into real life. So the way I kind of see, let's call the Peer Unschooling Network a social network, for like lack of a better, cooler phrase for it. And like I think of some social networks like something like Facebook, where you meet somebody and then you add them to your Facebook, and then you may never even talk to them again, right? But there's other social networks, like LinkedIn sometimes might work like this, where you connect with somebody online and then you'd never met them before, but then that extends into a real life friendship. And like there's a mental health online community that I was a part of for a long time that was purely an online community, and then those friendships built, and then those extended into real life friendships. And I think that's like the beauty of the internet that doesn't, I mean, it's sort of appreciated. I think when it comes to young people get scared of that idea that kids are going to meet and build community online, and then, oh my God, they might meet in person. But I think that is kind of like this beautiful thing that does happen, because like, yeah, the online mental health community I was a part of was really valuable to me. And it was like, there's not always places you can go to talk about mental health issues. And there's like a lot of stigma surrounding it. And I know that some unschoolers face that kind of stigma and judgment, that people find out they're homeschooled or unschooled, and they kind of deal with some issues with that. But I found in person mental health communities to be much better. I was told to move my head up a little bit. Okay, sorry. And so that's like a big challenge that like I've talked to a lot of the kids on our website, and some of them do like take the online friendship and they like travel to go meet each other in person. And it's really cool to see like a connection that was made online. Now these kids are flying across the country to meet up with each other. But really my dream for all this is to help facilitate like local communities organizing, not just to have a bunch of kids on the computer screen the whole time digitally. Like I think it's like this bridge that creates a connection that then should really extend into real life. So I love what you're doing. It's great.
You want to say something?
Yeah, I'd like to expand upon what Jim just said. I mean, my best friend, I've had him for about 5 years. We met online, and he's also an unschooler. He's a world schooler. And we had never met in person for the first 3 years of our friendship. And so it was for the longest time, it was a purely online connection that had been made. And that went on. So we met in person years later, and we traveled around together. And actually I have plans to travel. He and I are going to go backpacking in Thailand in a month or two.
Cambodia.
And Cambodia. And so, I mean, that it really does become something more than just an online connection. So I'd like to add that.
Okay, I couldn't get my unmute to work. I just wanted to tell a little bit about our community building, what happened with my family. And we were in the military, so we moved a lot. So we knew that we were going to have to just dive in. We were only going to be somewhere for 2 or 3 years at a time. And if we were going to get the most out of where we were, we just needed to figure it out. And so that it really was an advantage to us, because we kind of had this, a little fire lit under us to go ahead and reach out and make connections. And so I didn't realize that that was going to make this huge difference in my kids' experience. So when we moved to different places, we would often go and explore the community that was there and Sometimes it fit well. Most of the time it didn't. It was the late 90s. And so there were, communities that were more difficult to break into. So what we did, and what I would encourage people to do, because even if you don't move around a whole lot, what is cool is to realize that you can build whatever you need. And if you go somewhere and there isn't a community, build it. It doesn't even have to be big. It could just be 3 or 4 families. And so that was kind of the way we did it. And so we would sometimes in the beginning, we would join a co-op, or we would join some group that wasn't really our fit. And we were like on this quest to find people that were maybe not that happy with the group, or not that happy with the co-op. And maybe they would be willing to go, I don't know, to the nature center, or to the whatever was going on at the time. And then people were, they started to get together based on interests. And that made all the difference in the world. And next thing you know, the people that got together for the Nature Center wanted to get together and let's create these museum classes, or let's create this, monthly park day, or something else that was going on. And it just kind of evolved. So lots of times when people are brand new, they think, oh, well, there's no community to step into. That's okay. You're going to totally individualize this, and you're going to make what you need. And you'll be able to find a couple of other people. And then you just make sure that little core group keeps coming, and then others come a little trail off, and you only do the things that your kids really want to do. So if nobody joined you, that's all right. You're going to go and have fun anyway. So, we kind of built community that way in the very beginning. And, that was the 90s. So we didn't have the internet the way we have it now. Now it's so much easier to find people to say, hey, my kid is really interested in archery. Anybody else? I got this great guy that's going to teach us how to do something. I just need a couple other families. And then all of a sudden you put that out on your local group, and you got a couple other families. So it's a lot, it's kind of a merging of real life and digital kind of community building is what can happen now. And so that works really, really well for families. Over at, we have a giant page of, at unschoolingmomtomom.com, we have a list of all the local unschooling friendly groups that we know about. I imagine there are a couple of others that are little somewhere here and there, and we're not connected, but it's a growing thing. And I would recommend anybody to just join them and tap into it to see what else is going on in your community. And then you can be active in it. So I guess that's the start of our community building. We did other things since then, but I'll give Addison the floor.
Wait, before I can't wait to hear from Addison, but give me just 1 second, because I want to follow up with something that you said, Sue. So most people on this panel are dealing or creating community for the kids. I met you in person, and I know that you are such a support mechanism for parents. And I know that you focus on, with your business, your coaching business and so forth. But I would venture to say yes, we do it all for the entire family, but some of us are focusing on one element of the family, and everybody is affected. But I see you supporting and creating community for parents. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like, maybe in contrast to organizing events?
Sure. As the kids got older, and so I had this 20 years of knowledge about how to do this. How do you dive into a community? How do you build what your family might need? How do you make connections with other moms? Because really, I kind of think of it as a mother's movement, in that we have to kind of help each other figure out what to do. How do we do things a little bit differently? It's not a mainstream parenting approach. It's not a mainstream educational approach. And so it helps when you're swimming in a direction different than the mainstream. It helps to find other people that are doing something kind of similar to you. So you can look around and you can see people that have some similarities. They don't have to be exactly like you. They can just have some similarities. I had a friend one time that said, oh, if you think of it as percentages, somebody's like a 40% friend, or they'll come around for a certain amount. So just expect that from them. And then that kind of works. So somebody said 80 or 90%. All right, you're so happy. But if somebody else isn't, that's okay. They're going to show up for the field trips, and they're nice. Okay. So when you're connecting with other moms, or sometimes there were stay-at-home dads that were part of it, we ended up creating all kinds of online groups that first started with, I don't know what they were called in the beginning, e-groups, and there were just so many different names, and it evolved into Yahoo groups, and then it evolved into Facebook. And so now it's been Facebook for a while. And so we connect families through Unschooling Mom to Mom, where they can come and ask questions about how do you unschool, how do you manage this, how do you juggle your family, how do you, all the questions that people have, all the obstacles that they may have, because sometimes people join the group. The group's now like 21,000 people, and people will come and they'll ask, I think I'm going to take my kid out of school, but what about my me time? How am I ever going to have time for myself? And so we can talk to that. And so it's really interesting, in addition to how will they ever learn to read? How will they ever learn all these things? Because they're so swept away with the mainstream way. They think that if you don't learn it the way school presents it, it's not legit learning. And in fact, legitimate learning happens in so many different ways. So we can share all that kind of information through Facebook groups and through Facebook pages and Instagram and Pinterest. We have all kinds of things with Unschooling Mom to Mom right now. So I don't know if that answers what you were asking me, but yeah, I guess that's kind of what I'm doing now. All right.
Thank you, Sue. Is it my turn now? Okay, cool. So the community I'm going to be talking about is the teen community at the HSC conference. I'm certain a lot of you know about HSC conference, Homeschoolers Association of California. This is a conference I've been attending since before I can remember, as Lainey already pointed out. And it's very interesting. I've been I was going for a long time, and there were all these people that I saw around the conference and who I never really interacted with, but I remembered their faces. And every time I would go, every year, I would see them again, and I would think, oh, hey, it's that person again. I don't know their name, but I know their face. And then my involvement within the HSC conference community became much more in depth when I joined the Teen Conference Committee. Teen Conference Committee is a small group of officiated teenagers who plan all the teen events at the HSC conference, and that was very very formative for me in learning leadership and social interaction within a teen group setting, and it's been a fun ride. So the Teen Conference Committee, like I said, they plan all the teen events at conference. It's like 15-ish people. When I joined, it was smaller, but it's grown, and it's been very very fun to finally get a much more in-depth association with the conference, because for a while I was just an attendee, and then I joined the TCC. It's like, oh hey, I get to actually influence how this thing works. I'm not entirely sure where to take this.
You're doing great, Addison. What I want to ask you, though, is, okay, so if somebody's watching this and they don't know of HSC, I would just point out that HSC is a massive conference. There's over 1,000 attendees. And do you know how big the teen attendees, what's the number or the percentage? Because I do know at HSC, it's like two conferences in one, because there's like the normal conference for the adults and the kids and all that, but then there's the teen organization, and you guys are functioning on a whole committee. It's like the scope and scale of this is big. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know exactly what percentage of the conference is teenagers, but I do remember hearing at some point that there were around 300 teens attending the conference, out of the 1,000 or so that you said. So it is a nice big chunk of the conference that we plan for. And I'm not entirely sure how the conference really perceives us, so to speak, because I don't know. I've heard of there was this one year where at the end, Sasha, the conference coordinator, invited us up onto the stage, and then everybody was chanting TCC, TCC. But in recent times, I've been hearing people talking about how they're not the biggest fans of the way TCC acts a bit like a clique, which I suppose is a very valid concern, because that's what happens when you get a group of people to coordinate on something. They're going to form, a little clique, especially when you give them special badges. But yeah, I don't know. We often for anybody who's thinking about joining the TCC, I would suggest you try, because it's super fun. Like, there are monthly meetings for throughout the year leading up to the conference, and then when it's conference, it's like it's go time. You've been planning this all year. You have everything in your head, and then you execute it. It's like you get hardly any sleep. You're stressed out and tired, and you have no time, and you're running around doing all these different things, and it's the funnest thing in the world. Jim, I think we met at HSC, and we met when I was me and a couple of my TCC cohorts came in. We had like this some sort of event to put on, and we sort of rudely kicked you out of the room, and I apologize for that. But yeah. Sue, you said you have something to add?
I do.
No? Go ahead.
I want to ask him a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Give me just a second. My follow-up question for you, Addison, is you're bringing up some of the stuff that I want to dig deeper into, which is some of the challenges. So when you're managing and creating a community, the community that you're talking about is surrounding an event, right? I mean, it's an event that happens yearly, and so it's not like you're organizing when it's going to happen, just what's happening during that particular conference. So that's already established. But what you're bringing up is some of the challenges of being an organizer or a leader or somebody who holds space for community. How do you work around those things, because you're organizing and facilitating for your peers? What are some of the challenges that you come up against? Maybe it's a power struggle, maybe it's an authority struggle, I don't know what it is, but you've mentioned that there are some challenges. Could you talk a little bit about those things?
Sure. So in regards to a power struggle, like an internal power struggle within TCC, there are, you know how a group is. There's usually a few people who are more confident than others, and they speak up more often, and their ideas get more exposure. And then there are the rather quiet people who don't talk as much, but whose ideas still hold equal value, of course. They just don't often work up the courage to ask them. And so I think one of the challenges is making sure that everybody gets equal say, which is, I have a friend, Gabriel, who has been kind of formulating this plan about maybe suggesting to the TCC mom, who is my mom, Savannah McGrew. The TCC has a member called the TCC mom, who is a female adult who facilitates the stuff and makes sure everything stays in order. We've been thinking about possibly suggesting to her like a parliamentary system where there are multiple different parliaments that operate semi-independently from each other at these meetings, where you would, because a lot of the problem is that we plan these things in like a living room type space where everybody is gathered and everybody is trying to get their ideas in, and it's so difficult to keep it on track because everybody's like on their phones looking at memes or having side conversations or like just having their own little things, and it's difficult to keep it on track with so many people with their own independent minds and stuff. So I think I might have gotten off track here. I apologize. Okay. One of the problems is members of TCC, I think, do end up feeling a bit superior to the regular conference goers, even though they're not. Like I said, when you get a bunch of people in a room and you put them, when you assign them to a project and you tell them, "Hey, you're special. You get a badge," they're gonna feel superior. Which, I mean, we don't get paid for this. The only reward for it's volunteer work. The only reward for doing this would be maybe the special recognition that you get for putting in the work to plan these things. So I don't think it's too bad, but I haven't been on the receiving end of any TCC condescension, so I wouldn't know.
I just wanted to add that because I've been going to the HSC conference since 1999. And so I've seen the TCC evolve, and I think that it's really cool that they get this leadership opportunity, that they can take their ideas and kind of flesh it out and see what's going to work, and then bring it to the conference and see whether it flies or not, you know. And I think that's a really cool opportunity that a lot of teenagers don't get. But what I wanted to also add is, from a parent standpoint, I think it's fabulous to go to a conference and see so many teenagers gathered together. That, you know, everybody is different and unique and doing different things. And I think that it helps those parents who have younger kids visualize that this could be okay. This could actually work. I could see my kid kind of doing like that. And I think that having that many teenagers amassed in one place, especially for lots of families who live in communities that don't have a lot of teenagers. A lot of times what happens is the kids are homeschooling or unschooling or whatever until about 11 or 12, and then the parents get a little panicky and they think, I don't know, I don't want to ruin their lives. And they send them to school, or they go a different approach. And so I think by being able to go to a conference like HSC's, which is a really big one, it's a fantastic opportunity to see that teenagers can do this, and this can be a really fabulous experience. So I'm glad you guys are in there showing up and making it happen. So that's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, I think it is pretty cool that you know, HSC is a conference that people can go to and see all this positive reinforcement. You're not on your own in this thing. There are these hundreds of other folks who are going through the same thing and who have children who are turning out intelligent and world knowledgeable and rational and stuff. And yeah, I've got some more stories from TCC meetings and stuff that I could talk about, but I don't want to take up too much of the show's time. Jim, you said you had something that you wanted to add.
Yeah, first off, no worries about kicking me out of the room, man. No, I've been thrown out of nicer places. It's all good. But Sue, you made a point about how, like, parents will homeschool and then they'll reach like 11, 12 and they're not sure what to do, and then they have to send the kid to school. And so I've heard that trend. And then I've also met some kids that reach teenage, you know, they become teens and they've been in the school system, and then that's when some problems start happening and then they leave, or that's when kids decide that they want to take their education into their own hands and be self-directed learners, and they go kind of the unschooling route on their own. And so, like, it almost seems like there's kind of like these two things that are going on at the exact same time, where you've got some people that think that teenage time is the time to now send somebody to the structured environment. Some people are saying, oh, the teenage time is now the time to unplug from the structured environment. And like my like kind of focus has always been on like helping the people to unplug from the structured environment, but have somewhere to go, like to have a new community to go to that's outside of the existing one. So I was kind of curious, in your perspective from the parents that you've talked to, how come none of them reach a point where they say, oh, our kids need somewhere to go, why not have them form a community? Like, what do you think it is that has them make that point where they then retreat to the school system instead of, if they've been unschooling their whole life, you'd think they'd have that kind of mindset of, oh, well, we don't have what we need, well, we're going to build it. What do you think?
I think a lot of people, this may sound bad, but I think a lot of people say they've been unschooling and they haven't really. You know, they haven't done all the mental work that it takes to undo a whole lot of that schoolish kind of thought. So they're still thinking things like, how am I going to teach them algebra? What about calculus? What about, you know, they're still thinking those things. What if you can't get into college? And they're not tapped into stuff where they can see these doors are all open to unschoolers everywhere, that they can, if they need those subjects, they're available at a community college or Khan Academy or whatever. But they don't necessarily have to have it. And that's what, you know, I think a lot of those families that then retreat to the school system, they never really kind of grasped that. So they kind of burned out because they were living this kind of dual thing where they were having fun, but they were feeling guilty. And so then they thought, oh gosh, we've got to do something. I'm going to ruin their lives. I will say that from our standpoint, I had a kid who, my youngest one, wanted to go see what school was like. So at 15, she wanted to dance on the drill team thing at halftime, and she had all these ideas of what school was like. She did it for about a year, and the truth of the matter, I mean, she made the drill team. She did a lot. It wasn't like the Lizzie McGuire movie. You know, it wasn't everybody just hangs at a locker. And so I think it's often the grass is greener. You know, you think that kids are getting something that your kids aren't getting, and so you might do the opposite. So that could be happening. But as for, you know, I think that when they really grasp unschooling, what they understand is that pursuing interests, they will find people that they can do stuff with. They don't necessarily have to have 25 of them. Maybe they'll just have 2. Or maybe they'll just have a friend that they can do something with. Or maybe they'll tap into something at the rec center or something, and it won't be necessarily other unschoolers. It will be people that like photography or people that are interested in something they're interested in. And so what I see is that people that have really spent the time understanding unschooling, which is what I really try to help people do, because then they're going to be in a lot better position to truly love the choices that they're making as teenagers. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of what I have.
That's helpful.
Lainey, you were nodding. What were you thinking?
Yeah. No, I was thinking the same thing, and I was also thinking that all of those things are true. And if there was already a pre-existing community or like events that Candy's organizing to, you know, keep their interest and keep the kids inspired, or, you know, stuff like that was available at, you know, school, because I hear from parents all the time that say, well, okay, high school years, my kid really wants to have a social life, and that like drives the, you know, desire to go into school so they could have a social life with other, you know, because that real deep craving, it's a deep craving for community. It's not a deep craving to go to school. It's a deep craving to connect with like-minded people, and the obvious programming, I feel, you know, especially in the U.S., is go to school. That's where you know, meet your friends. So.
And I think even more so, it's just people have this idea of it because the school system is already established. There are already people there, and there are people attending it. And so I feel like when a lot of people suddenly have this problem of, oh, my kid is really searching for community, but I don't see any here, it's easier for them to jump at this idea of something that's already there, something that's already established, than to get creative and to create their own community that better suits them. So it's just a matter of what is readily available and then what actually really will serve you.
I just want to add too, Jim, to your question about why haven't moms done this? Why haven't we stepped up and created something? One of the reasons is because we're in the thick of it. You know, a lot of times people are like, oh, if only those unschoolers would do this. Well, we're in the middle of living really full, active lives, raising families, doing laundry, fixing food, getting someone from point A to point B because they don't drive yet, helping them get their driver's license, you know, all the things that, you know, real life is full of. And it's a limited thing. So my interest in teens, most of the time as a parent, is while my kids are teens. So when they're not teens anymore, I hand the baton to someone else and wish them well. And the truth is that, you know, it's not a business. It's a family. And so you're in it while you're in it, and then you're not in it and you're in something else. So I don't know if that kind of explains why aren't there communities? Well, there are. They're little, and they'll come and go. You'll see it. Like, you'll see like a connection of families that are doing tons of stuff, and they're going on camping trips together, and they're connecting, and they're sending their kids to see each other. And then those kids get older, and they, you know, get married, or they go to college, or they get a job, or they have a career, and they move out, and then that kind of dissipates, and then another one kind of, you know, steps in.
I think, you know, right along with what you're saying, Sue, I think that, you know, yeah, we are in the thick of it as unschooling moms, unschooling parents. I think that a lot of the unschooling parents that I've met just in establishing the little community that we have here in our state, that a lot of them feel afraid to try to start something. They don't even know where to start, where to begin. And to those people, I just say, you know, to basically do exactly what you're doing. I mean, you find what your child is passionate about, try to find some fun things surrounding that, go ahead and plan it out and see if anybody wants to tag along, just like you said earlier. And, you know, we've done that. The Majestically Awkward that we just started, I mean, we just started that towards the end of last year, and it's already grown to over 350 people. So, I mean, I think that you'll find a lot of people will follow you and follow your lead if you just, you know, put the information out there. So we just try to encourage parents to, you know, share as much as you can on our page, or you know, the peer Unschooling Network. Is that what it's called, Jim? Peer Unschooling Network page. You know, any of these things, you know, you just share the information, because the more information we have out there, HSC page, you know, any of that, the more information we have, the better. The more stuff and the more resources we have for our kids and our parents, the better. And I think a lot of people are afraid to put themselves out there because of rejection or whatever. But if you're going to do it anyway, just go ahead and put it out there. And if you're the only one on the field trip, like you said earlier, Sue, you're still having fun.
So I should have, I don't know if I should have clarified this a little different. I was more curious about how come none of the teens have initiated and started their own community. So it reaches an age where, jump in if you got something.
Well, I was just going to say, I know at least with my child, he has done that. That was part of what we have done here. Most everything that I've done, I could not have done without my teen, without the help of my teen. You know, it was through his passions, like when he decided, you know, oh, I love tabletop games and not just the Monopoly games, like the weird kind of RPG games, the role-playing games, things like that. Lainey and Miro actually exposed us to Werewolf at an unschooling convention, and after that it just kind of took off, and he wanted to start playing all of these different tabletop games. Well, from that, he decided, well, I'm going to start my own group. I'm going to start my own tabletop team group. And he did. And so every month he had like a little party where the kids would come and they would play different tabletop games. Sometimes they'd have a theme, sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes they would dress up like pirates if it was a pirate theme party, and just have a lot of fun. And then he has started cosplay clubs. He and his two best friends have started a cooking club. They've started all these different things just from shared passions. And he also helped us with a cooperative that we tried out last year that, you know, it didn't succeed, but that's okay because you learn from your failures. But he taught several classes in the cooperative, and he helped, you know, that from the ground up. So at least in my experience, you know, my teen is out there and trying to do that, and his friends are as well. His best friends are right in the thick of it with him, trying to start different things for the teens in our area.
I think that's how it worked for us too, that locally they did stuff. My son started a community service thing where they did different community services once a month. They connected it all through 4-H, and so some were unschoolers and some were public school kids, and they just had this shared intent to make a difference in the community. Then they ended up, there was this, I don't even know if it still exists, this thing called Teens Make a Difference Day, and it was something that was a nationwide push that happened, and schools participated, and they participated in that too. And so it was, you know, then later I'm thinking at my other kids, they had like parties where they would come to the house, and it was like a movie night. It'd be a movie marathon all weekend or something like that. And so I think they do what you're talking about, but they just do it more locally instead of creating something giant, because creating something giant is a job. You know, it's work. Look at Lainey. She's created a fabulous job. And both of y'all. And so, you know, I think that they do stuff. And I think one of the things that Candy was talking about is how they would connect. My kids would connect with somebody on some topic. Next thing you know, they like that kid a lot. And together they decide to do something else. And then it kind of organically grows from that. And I would imagine that's kind of like Miro was talking about, where he met somebody, and next thing you know, they have more things in common, and that grows and grows. And that's real life. So.
Good.
Yeah, I talk about Project World School a little bit, and that's actually, that was also initiated by a teenager, by me. And we've definitely worked on it together. It's been a partnership. But it came from needs that I had and things that I needed to really experience. And we had the idea that because I was having these struggles, other people in our same immediate community they must also be having these same struggles. And so it was as much to alleviate my problems as to help others who might be having those same problems. And so fast forward, we're still working on it, and it's this really huge thing. And we actually are very intentional about working with teen volunteers as well. So it is also a community-driven thing. It's something that we enlist the help of other community members, other teenagers. And so it's something that is kind of self-sustaining itself at this point. We're pushing it to get completely self-sustaining. But it is something, and I think it's really important also for like a sense of purpose. It's important that that adolescents and teenagers and just youth feel like they're a part of something, and they're actually working and making a difference towards something, and collaborating and contributing. And I think that's really big. It's got a really big part to do with, you know, your overall emotional health. I think that's really important. And so, you know, I am very happy to have been able to create something that is continuing and it's still being created by others, and I think that's really great. So yeah, it's about the collaboration.
Cool. So on that note, let me mention one thing that I did find out about that I didn't create, but I've been trying to research places where they've had instances of teams starting their own learning centers, like kind of looking at kind of a Sudbury school model or a Liberated Learners Center, Agile Learning Center, some kind of places where there's been like something that's continued that was initiated by teens. And actually I found out just like 3 days ago that in Toronto, Canada, in the 70s, there was a group of teens that started a summer program. And they started this summer program where they would kind of get together and choose things that they were passionate about, find teens with similar interests. They would go and they'd find a location and a mentor, and they would do kind of self-directed learning as teens in the city of Toronto. And what happened was it went so well that the kids then did some kind, I'm trying to learn more. I'm like doing the research on this as, you know, no, like as, you know, so I'm still working on it, but they found a way to then turn that into an all year round program in substitute of school. And so they ended up using some of the Summerhill and Sudbury model, and they actually ended up being publicly funded. So the government ended up funding it. And now over the last, so now it's 2017, in the last 30, 40 years, there's now a series of these schools, you know, they're called schools, in Toronto that are based and publicly funded based on an initiative that teens did. And I guess it's like only for juniors, and so you have to be 17 or 18. And that's, so like I was like, oh my God, so this thing existed. Like some people out there have done it. And the fact that it's existed somewhere, you know, it's kind of exciting because it gives like hope that that could happen in other places. Because like a lot of the kids on the Peer Unschooling Network, now granted, there's a bias there. These are kids that are in an online digital community for unschoolers. So there's a certain bias towards kids that are on there that have, at least have expressed that they have felt like they lack community in their area, right? Like there's a filter there. Doesn't mean that every unschooler has that circumstance, but those that have landed themselves on the site do. But then there's like so many kids that are in school and are unhappy. If you've ever been to, there's a website, School Survival, that is this massive website, and it's actually really depressing and full of like incredibly negative energy. I mean, it's a good, I didn't mean to like knock the site. And there's a very negative culture because it's all these people that are trapped with a problem that they can't solve, that they're all stuck. And so like just looking at the numbers, I mean, there's like 13 million teenagers that are in America, not to like dismiss the rest of the world. These are only the numbers I got off the top of my head. And there's only like 50,000 of them that are unschoolers. You know, so these numbers are like staggeringly indifferent. So I just keep wondering like why there haven't been more teen initiative kind of learning centers, more people kind of unplugging from the system together. And like when I went to school, like I found out I was getting in a lot of trouble. My grades were really good and I was getting kicked out all the time. And like I was getting grounded. And if you're grounded, then the only time you get to socialize is in school, which just makes you act like a bigger asshole, you know? And so I found out that there was a magnet school opening up in the city of Hartford that was near me. And I was like, oh, that's something different. Like, let me look into that. And so I went to it. And like, the one thing was that everyone that was there chose to be there. It was still like a school model. It was like school on drugs. It was like, no, that would be different. It was school on steroids. That's a better way of looking at it. That it was kind of like amped up school. But everyone chose to be there. And so there was some kind of common community that everybody there was looking for something different and ended up like going there. And so I sort of found that. I mean, it would have been much better if it was some kind of a like truly self-directed learning center. But I mean, I know there's people out there looking for it, and it's just strange, you know, like Sue mentioned, there's a lot of people that reach teen years and then they go to the school system. Meanwhile, there's some people unplugging, and I don't know, I started blabbing, but the point of it is I wanted to share this exciting thing that I learned about in Toronto, that there is at least one story in North America of teens starting something like that.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, but I would also say that maybe a consideration is not all teens want to go to a learning center. maybe they're seeking community in other ways. And I think one thing that we sort of touched on, and I mentioned it in the comments, the cool thing is everybody on this panel I've met in person in real life at a conference. so I think that there is culture and community surrounding the conferences that are an annual gathering of people in your community to come together. And again, when I read the introduction, the introduction talking about the definition of community. Community is really about people with the same goals and the same needs that come together to learn from one another, whether it's intentional or just a byproduct of being in community. That's what happens. And conferences are a really, really central place for our community of unschoolers, self-directed learners, or those in alternative education to come together at least annually. And there are other things too. I mean, again, schools or learning centers like Jim was talking about is definitely one option, but I don't think that's for everyone. I think, people prefer to be outside of the system and have other options like Project World School or the stuff that Candy's organizing. But let's talk about conferences for a bit and what that looks like, because it expands the concept of community just a little bit. And maybe Addison, you could talk about it from your perspective, because that's your focus in terms of organizing community there.
Totally, yeah. What people were saying earlier about what you were saying earlier about the craving for a community, like that's something I've for a long time I was envious of school kids, whatever you want to call them, because of that they got to go to this place and socialize with all these different peers every day, and for me that was HSC conference, but HSC conference only happens for a few days a year. So I'm always very, very excited to go to HSC conference and to socialize with all these people that I know, because pretty much everybody in my friends group I've met in one way or another through the California homeschooling community at large in connection to HSC conference. A lot of my close friends that I've met at HSC that I've had experiences with at HSC, and it's the greatest outlet for socialization that I have. The one that I respect the most, that I have the most fun at, and it's really interesting because it's also at a different location. Not every time, but a lot of times. It's switched hotels like 5 or 6 times since I started going, I believe. 4? Okay, thank you, Sue. Sue says 4. Yeah. What was your original question? You don't know? All right.
I'm sorry. Remember, I was like, that's not helpful, Mom.
To talk about conferences.
Conferences.
Yeah, really, you just left him floundering there.
Talk about conferences. Okay. I've been to one other homeschooling conference. Life is Good, but I was long enough ago that I don't really remember any of it, and I don't think I enjoyed it that much. I don't think I enjoyed it nearly as much as HSC. I don't know why.
I want to just add about conferences. One of the reasons I think, Addison, is that HSC does tons of stuff specifically for teenagers, that because the teens have had so much say in it, it's not just a few moms got together and decided some teens would like this. It's that teenagers are really in there doing this, and it makes a huge difference. We went to lots of conferences, and my kids had lots of fun at different ones that have come and gone. But HSC, because it has such consistency that it's been around for so long, and they've really learned how to do it right. And so I think that that's one of the cool, because they have this thing for teenagers. I know tons of teenagers who have met each other at conferences and then get together later or stay in connection online or something like that. And then they have, because the organization has camping trips and other little things along the way, I think that it is something that just helps everybody build more community and feel good about it. So just thought I'd toss that in there.
Cool. So I'm going to do a plug for Sue. So Sue's website has the most complete list I've seen of unschooling conferences, the Unschooling Mom to Mom site, and I've pointed a lot of people to it that have said they're interested in unschooling. And I say, hey, you need to meet people that do this. Sue's website has a list of all the conferences. Go to one and actually meet people face-to-face that do it. The other thing that I want to mention in terms of like for people that are listening to this, I imagine like the viewers of this, some of them are teens looking for community or parents looking for community for their kids. There's some camps that are out there too. So like Not Back to School camp is one that I worked at. Actually, Miro was there this summer when I worked there. And I highly recommend it. I mean, I could go on about like my experience with it. It was amazing. I also know there's a few other ones. I think Camp Stomping Ground. And I'm pretty sure that's an unschooling camp. And then the East Tennessee.
They're also listed on that conference page you're talking about.
Oh, are they on the same page? Okay.
Yeah. There's a whole long line of stuff. Yeah. I think Blake just took a bunch of people somewhere.
In Unschool Adventures, yeah, that's another one. So there's other, like, you make a good point about like the annual community, like that communities don't necessarily need to be a place that you go every day. You know, I think I made a mention of like a mental health community that I was a part of in Western Massachusetts. And so I lived there for like a year or two and they met weekly. And so like while I was there, I would go weekly. And now I don't, you know, I go now once a year, but I still feel like a part of that. And I go there and there's a couple of familiar faces and there's a culture and a thing that like I feel like I'm going back to. And so I think make a really good point that you don't need like everyday places. Like community kind of comes in these other fashions too.
I wanted to also just chime in and talk about the conferences as well. You know, yeah, I definitely think that the annual relationships that you develop, you may only see them once a year, but I know that my child in particular, you know, he's kept in touch with several people that he's met at the conferences, you know, via Facebook or Skype, things like that. And not just he looks forward to going every year, particularly to Un in the Sun here in St. Petersburg, which is close to us. And that's where we really were exposed to our first community of unschoolers, because although that we've always unschooled, we never really had met any other unschoolers here in this area. They were all homeschoolers. Or kind of, I guess, loose-knit homeschoolers, for lack of a better word, but relaxed unschoolers, or homeschoolers rather. But when we met that community, it was like, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to explain. It was almost like we found our tribe, and we could relax and be ourselves around these people, and it was amazing. To be, I guess, surrounded 24 hours a day with like-minded individuals that gave you, you know, support and gave your child support. The other teens or kids, you know, they all got along and supported each other, you know, for their similarities as well as their differences. And it's been a wonderful experience for us. He was very sad when we didn't get to go this past year because we were doing scuba certification at the time, so we couldn't do it. But we're looking forward to going next year and hopefully a couple other conferences as well.
Cool. Yeah. What Jim was saying about Not Back to School Camp. I'm actually very, very interested in attending Not Back to School Camp next time it happens. I learned about it at this last HSC conference through my friends Lauren and Chloe, and they said that it was super awesome. And I think you said you were like a facilitator there or something?
Yeah, I worked as an advisor this year. This is the only time I've done it, so I've done it for one session. But
I think they might have mentioned you and said that you were like one of their favorite advisors. I don't know. Might have been somebody else, but you seem like the sort of person who would be a favorite advisor. Yeah, and I don't know. I wanted to talk a bit more about how important HSC conference has become to me, because since joining the TCC, every single HSC conference that I've attended has been a major point in my life for me that has changed me as a person. And it's because of the greater involvement in the community. Like, getting to know these people better, getting to have a greater impact on their experience at the conference, and getting to interact with them to a greater degree is all due to me joining the TCC. Like, it helped me become more open about speaking to people, more confident in myself, more willing to take up a position of leadership, and that's all contributed to my enjoyment of the experience of HSC. So I think, I don't know, HSC holds a special place in my heart, and I'm very proud to be on the TCC.
That's cool. I found that, like, when I met Lainey originally at Life Without Instructions conference, and the people that I met there were saying similar things about this annual coming together of people that was like this annual thing they look forward to every year. And it was like every year was kind of like their, some people almost like their New Year's Day is where they set their resolutions, and the new year comes and all that kind of stuff. And that's their like landmark for the year. And for these people, it was like that conference. And it sounds like that's kind of how HSC is for you. And the kids that I've talked to at Not Back to School camp, they kind of treat that as like their annual like milestone of the year, where they, and actually part of the camp tradition is they do like a thing where they talk about setting goals for the next year. And I think that there's like these little cultural elements to these communities that make them unique. Like at camp, they have like particular events that the kids look forward to every year that go on certain nights. And I guess they've tried to change them up. And people have actually resisted and say, no, this is like part of tradition. Like, this event needs to go down, like they have like bonding night. And they're like, no, we can't change it. We don't want to change too much up. It needs to happen this way. And there's certain like tradition of ceremony or ritual that's like a shared experience that everybody has. And they can all relate to it. Like, I kind of joke that the kids that go to school, they don't really get to socialize very much. But it's kind of like they spend all day watching 8 hours of the same TV show that everyone else is watching. So they have stuff to talk about. They have like this shared experience that they're all going through. And I think that like is part of community. Like, I've joked with folks that, because I don't have, like, I world school, I guess, myself now. My kids aren't alive yet. But so they're sort of, I guess, in a way, world schooling. Like, as I travel a lot now, so I don't necessarily have like much of a constant community. And so something I brought up is that like part of community is where the other people know your common experiences, and they kind of know some of your friends, and they know some of your things. Like, what's the joke that I used? I said something to my parents where I was like, or it was maybe my sister or someone, I was like, if I wanted to throw a birthday party for you, I could do it because I know who all of your friends are. I know all of your, like, I know your whole thing. But like me, like, I'm kind of all over the place. I'm like a node that is more connected to people. Like, not all my friends know all of each other. It's much more disconnected. Whereas in a community, you kind of know not just the person, but who they know and their experiences, and that like kind of gives this common culture to exist in and have things to talk about. And it seems like at HSC, you probably have like these same traditions and things that people kind of look forward to and expect. Certain things change, but there's certain like cultural like things that almost define the event in a way, and the glue that sticks the community together.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that you bring up the shared experience, because we're, talking about conferences. Conferences are for big groups of people to come together. What we've been doing for the past 5 years for our retreats are working with smaller groups for more concentrated periods of time. So we're together, a group, we just finished last week a group here in Greece, and altogether we were 11 people, but we lived together as community for 4 solid weeks together. And there definitely is a culture that comes out of that. I mean, talk about not back to school camp, but for 4 consecutive weeks in a foreign country. Like, it's that kind of intensity. And each particular community that we work with has its own culture, even though we as facilitators set the space and hold the space for it. But different people come in and occupy different roles in the community, and it's always co-created and designed in the moment. And the thing that we find is the teens, the adolescents that come to our retreats, we have a 70% return rate, which is so high, So we only have like a small handful of teens that have only been to one retreat. Most of them have been to more than one. So that kind of intense community, it feels right. It feels right, and people are getting something from that. So whether you get it on a small scale or a large scale, I think that sort of connection is what we're all looking for.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a sense too that everybody that showed up there came there looking for that. It almost reminds me of, not to bring school into it, but like being a freshman in college. Every other freshman is all in the exact same situation where they don't know anyone. They're looking to meet some, so they're like in that mindset of, I'm here and I'm looking to meet people, and like they're all here for that same purpose. And so there's kind of that like everybody signed up to be meeting people right now and to be connecting with people right now at your conference, or sorry, at your retreats. Is that what you call them? Retreats? Yeah, your retreats or these conferences, they're kind of like in meeting people zone, where you could take that exact same person and put them on the train, or on the bus going through the city with their headphones on. It's the same person, the same problems, same issues, but they're not in like mentally in that, okay, I'm now open to people and I know that they're open to me right now. It's kind of like that agreed upon thing when people go to these conferences and retreats and camps, that they're in that mode and they already know everyone else is also open to it. Or they might not be as willing to just start a conversation with somebody who's the guy sitting next to them on the bus. You know, you might sit next to that guy every day on the train going to work or wherever, and you never initiate a conversation.
I just want to bring up one thing that was something that came up when I was talking to people about my book, and we were talking about the different young people that didn't go to school during the teen years. And it was actually a criticism of the book. But what it was they said, you know, everybody isn't all about being an extrovert and go, 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 go. And, you know, we talk a lot about building these big communities or building lots of, you know, what you were saying, Jim, about daily contacts. A lot of people don't like that. And I think that that's okay. And what's so cool is that we can allow kids to be who they really are, that they can be as introverted or as extroverted as they are. And, you know, sometimes it's a period of time they're introverted and then later they're extroverted. I mean, you don't have to always be one forever. And so what's nice is you can step into these little opportunities for community and take as much of it as you want, where you're not like signed up and you're stuck there day in, day out. And so I just kind of wanted to toss a little bit over towards the introverts of the crowd who are maybe community they like in small doses. And then they get to be able to create that too, or participate, dip their toes in, come out, do it at whatever degree they want to participate.
Sue, I want to ask you a question. When you're working, since you work with parents and you do a coaching, when parents are asking and complaining that they need more, that their kids need more friends, is that sometimes really a clue that they're not feeling like they're included as part of a community? Or is there ever, you know, a misinterpretation of those needs?
I think that a lot of times people, we're given these messages in society that we need to have a lot of people around us all the time. And it's because we went to school, or most of us did. And so we think if you don't have a lot of people around you all the time, something's wrong. And even those kids that didn't go, they still get that message, whether they're getting the message from Daniel Tiger and Arthur on PBS, that everything is all about school and lots of people and lots of friends. So I think sometimes parents might hear their kids say, I wish I had more friends, at a low point in one of their days, and then the parent, it triggers something in them where they think, oh my gosh, you're right, you've never had all these, just that they haven't worked it through, I guess. It sounds kind of rambly, but I mean, the point being that we have ideas in our head of what we think correct social interaction should be, and we can kind of push that off on the kids when it's not necessarily how they really feel. And so I think that a lot of time, like one of the kids in the book, I say kids, and they were like 15 to 39, but one of the people in the book.
I would say, okay, gotcha.
Okay. Hey, Jim, mute your thing. Anyway, one of the kids in the book said, how many is enough? When I said, you have enough friends? And they're like, how many is enough? And I know personally some of the people, I'm not going to call them out, but some of them said, I didn't have enough friends. And they had more friends than if you'd gone to school and had friends. So I think that we have different perspectives. I'll wave to Jim. Goodbye, Jim. The library's kicking him out. I think people have different perspectives of I lost my train of thought. We just had people come in the door. I lost it. Lainey? Just different expectations, of what kids and what teenagers need and how many is enough. And a lot of those kids that complained or said, I wasn't that happy as a teenager, they became college students and everything was fine, or they went and got a job and everything was fine. And I think you always think that everybody else has some secret handshake that you didn't get. And it's not true. It's just part of developmentally where they are too as teenagers to feel a little bit like it's not working for me. And, it's just kind of a time in their lives where they can feel a little dissatisfied, and then over time they can look back and say, that wasn't so bad actually. The pluses outweighed the minuses. So I don't know if that answers your question. But.
Yeah, and Sue, you hit on something. The idea of stepping outside of a system in general is not an easy step. It's not easy to do that, and I think the reason why this conversation is so powerful is because we're talking about the need for community and creating community for self-directed learners. So these are kids and families that are not in school. So people stepping outside of the system, it's not an easy choice to make. And so if you feel like you're doing it in a vacuum without anybody supporting you, it makes it a much harder journey. And then, of course, we're talking about all the individual pieces like, supporting kids and supporting teens and supporting the parents, and then supporting all of us together, in a big conference where we all can, be ourselves. So I think there's like many different levels to it just because of self-directed learners have different needs. I actually want to ask one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up a little bit early. But the question is kind of highly conceptual. When I read the introduction about the community having common interests, I think that's important to have an effective community, and whether it's a big one, alternative education, or smaller ones, say marine biology. Creating and organizing and holding space for a community is not always the easiest things. And I want to talk a little bit about, I hate to use the word governance, but Addison, you talked a little bit about that by creating different legislative bodies in the job. I mean, a little bit. What I really want to talk about is how does somebody who's facilitating a community define and create, even if you're doing it together through the community, co-creating, how do you create a way of being, a way of functioning, a way of doing things, and how do you maintain those things, those ways of doing things within the community, especially for large ones? Are you understanding my question? Everybody, thumbs up, you get it?
Kinda. So in the TCC, there was already a method of doing things when I joined. That's basically, you have a meeting, everybody arrives, you have a meeting, you take a break, you have another meeting, and then everybody spends the night, and then you have another meeting the next morning. And at these meetings, there's sort of a structure. In the first few meetings, it's we get these big pieces, gigantic pieces of paper, and tack them onto the wall, and then somebody gets a marker, and then everybody just spouts off ideas for events and dances and workshops, spitballing. It's a bit like a think tank, and then the person with the marker writes them all down, and then everybody votes on which ones they think should get in. And then throughout the rest of the meetings throughout the year, it's a lot of figuring out how you're going to put these on. Like, because they're just ideas. They're just very base concepts. People are like I said, spitballing. Like, oh, okay, well, we can, if we want to have this, then we could buy this on Amazon, or we could get this somewhere else, and then you could hook that up, and then you could get that to his house so he can do that, and blah, 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 blah. And then by the time conference rolls around, we usually have a semi-cohesive plan, but it's much more loose and much more undefined than I think a lot of people would assume. Like, it's half a plan. You're going to have Jackson joining you, Sue. That's cool. And at conference, sorry, should I not have? Okay, that's fine. At conference, it's I think the members of TCC need to work more on acting like role models. That's something that I try to do, but a lot of the TCC members end up running around and swearing like teenagers do. But and you know, that sort of stuff happens at conference. But we've gotten some complaints from parents of small children who were upset about this, and so I think it would probably be good if people in the TCC were to start acting more like the ideal role model during conference, but during the meetings it's no holds barred. Like that may have gotten a bit off track, but
Actually, not at all. What I loved, what I got from you is you're using some sort of consensus with voting, right? So that's really cool. So that's the nature of your community. It's everybody has a voice, and you vote, and you share, and you brainstorm. That's cool. Thanks. Anybody else want to talk?
And that's really hard to do. I mean, it works for that because it's a system in place, but like I've been involved in communities where we decided to do a shared leadership type thing, and it can be really rough because everybody doesn't have the same work ethic or the same goals in mind, and it can wreak havoc. And so sometimes what happens is the stronger voices prevail. And if they're voices that, what is that phrase about what a leader that can't communicate with their people is really just a person taking a walk or something, because there's nobody following them. And so I think that sometimes that happens when if you become too strict or too rule-oriented, especially in the unschooling community where people don't like a lot of rules. You've got to figure out a way to be clear and be accepting. And I mean, at least I think of like with Unschooling Mom to Mom, that's a lot of people with a lot of opinions. And so we have tried really hard to create a community that's just trying to help people figure out how to do this. We're not trying to solve all the other world problems of some of the other things. And so I think narrowing the focus, like with Addison, where their focus is to create this teen program at a conference that helps community a lot. So like when we had our kids and they were doing things, they had, we were just focusing on how we're going to get all these families to this museum activity. And you just have your singular focus things, and then you have people that are solely interested in that. They participate, they decide they want to cooperate, and having that narrower focus seems to help. I don't know. Candy, I think I cut you off. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. I think that, just like you said, I think that unschoolers, as a rule, don't like to have many rules put upon them. And I think that at least with our community, first of all, we kind of created everything, by the seat of our pants to begin with anyway. And I think that as we go along, we kind of make things up. We try to keep our focus as much on the kids as possible. And we want to be all-inclusive. We want to make sure that everyone feels like their child has a place in our community, regardless. So I think that any rules that we have put socially in our group have been because of that reason. We try to keep politics, religion, all of those things out of our group. And we post all of the rules on all of our pages, and make all of the parents aware that regardless of what everybody's beliefs are, while you're in the group, we need to exercise tolerance. And that's the biggest thing with the group that I belong with. And, the group, we kind of have incorporated not only the groups that myself and my son have created, but also several other little groups that other parents have created, clubs, groups in the area, some other mothers. So we have several administrators that have created other groups that are on our page, and we just kind of moderate everything that's going on. And if we see anything that's inappropriate, we try to talk to the people, the parents, and go from there. And if we feel like we need to assert another rule, we certainly will do that, but we try to keep everything to a minimum and just keep it focused on the kids.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, everybody, for sharing that. We're going to actually go around to each of our panelists, and the audience may notice that we did lose Jim, so he won't be in the closing remarks. But first, I want to actually go around to our panelists and ask you to share any closing remarks about community, or actually share any advice that you might have for somebody who may be a self-directed learner that may be seeking community and not sure how to go about it. And then also share your projects and websites. And I will remind our audience that you can find everybody's links on the show notes page. So who would like to jump in first?
I guess we'll jump in before it gets too wild here. This is Jackson, my grandson, and so he's joining us. There they all are. Anyway, I just want to tell people to create what your family needs and be resourceful, look around for stuff, think about different things that would work. What would your kids like? What would be ways that you can feel more connected in a community? And sometimes it's going to be online, and sometimes it's going to be real life, but put yourself out there, especially, we talked a little bit about introverts and extroverts. Sometimes mom's the introvert. And so you kind of got to push yourself a little bit and make yourself go ahead and try something that that your kids need, and that's sometimes the best way that we end up creating community. So that's probably the best thing I can tell as far as a tip for how to create community. I don't know. Is that Good enough? All right.
And your websites?
Well, my website, SuePatterson.com and unschoolingmomtomom.com. And in November, I just will tell you a little bit about what's going on. I have these 2 private coaching groups that are really kind of fun. And so what's happened with Unschooling Mom to Mom is it's so giant. I just can't be in there all the time answering every question. And so I have these private groups where people can come and be part of it. And next month, we are doing how to deal with the naysayers. Because with the holidays coming and with people are kind of nervous about what to do about friends and family that have a lot of negative ideas about the educational choices that they're taking. So that's going to be our focus in November, and people are welcome to join the little private group just for that month. And I'm also, because, once I get an idea, I'm going to do this Unschooling Gratitude Challenge. So I have on my website, SuePatterson.com, if you look on there, it says Unschooling Gratitude Challenge. If you click it, you can join us, and it's free, and we're going to every day talk about the different ways that we can shift our attitude to be more with gratitude, and you'll do it with other unschooling parents. And sometimes the focus is totally unschooling, and sometimes the focus is just life. So everybody is more than welcome to join us. And let's see. That's probably all. And I'm happy to, if somebody needs help one-to-one, I'm happy to give anybody some support, whether it's how to figure out how to tap into your community or just how to get more comfortable with this idea of unschooling your kids. I just want more families to be able to have the fabulous adventures that we had. So that's all I have.
Just to piggyback off of Sue, I think that, if you have an idea, just go out there and put yourself out there, whether it be something that you're passionate about or something that your child is passionate about. You can do either or, because if you put it out there, there are certainly going to be other families out there that have similar interests that will be willing to come out and help support your efforts or join you on your adventures. And just don't be afraid to put yourself out there if you're not finding what it is that you're needing in your area. And other than that, that's all I can say. Again, if just like with Sue, if anybody needs help one-to-one, I'd be more than happy to help you out. You can message me, or you can go on our group page. We have hundreds of people that are wonderful, pillars of support in our community, and they all do different things. We have a lot of unschoolers on our group, but like I said, we try to be very inclusive, and we actually do have a lot of homeschoolers, and we even have a couple of public schoolers that join us on trips from time to time, just because they like what we do and they want to expose their children to other things. So anybody that wants to reach out to us. We have a Facebook page, Majestically Awkward Fun Schoolers, because we call what we do fun schooling. So come on Facebook and find us there. And all of our events are listed. And we're constructing a website, which is majesticallyawkward.org.
Going off of what Lainey was asking us to talk about building a community, and I find that one of the best ways to become included in a community and to help interact with it is to build up the confidence to go out and become a part of it. Because if you're not lucky enough to have somebody who's willing to help include you into the community and to bring you into it, to some very nice, inclusive person, if somebody like that isn't present, then it's a good skill to be able to go in and enter a community on your own and meet people and interact and become a part of it. It's not a very long statement. I don't have much to say on the topic, but those are my final thoughts. As for a website, I don't really have one, but I included a link to this little blogspot writing dumb thing, which is a requirement that I made one for my creative writing class that I'm taking. So I went ahead and used that. You can check it out if you want, but there's nothing on it right now. On to you, Lainey.
Thank you. And again, Jim wasn't able to contribute to the closing thoughts, but again, I'm sure he would urge that you would go to his website and visit the show notes page for everybody's links. And I just want to thank everybody for being a part of this panel. And I just thought it was an amazing conversation and a really diverse look at all the different aspects of community. And I'm really honored that you were all a part of tonight's conversation. I want to thank Dina for helping produce the show, and also Mel and Biggie, always thank you so much at Conscious Consumer Network. Before we sign out, I just want to take a heartfelt moment, and since we're talking about community, I just want to honor the life of one of our community members, a young unschooler who passed away just under 2 weeks ago. His name was Bryson Couture, and Bryson and his mom Lori were on a show the first year of For the Love of Learning. The title was Paleo Parenting and Educating, and it was episode number 27. Lori, his mom, has also been on another show, episode number 78, which was a discussion about children's rights. Lori was an advocate for children's rights and adopted her son Bryson after he had a very difficult, early years. Miro and I, talking about conferences, met Lori and Bryson at a conference 2011, I think it was, and immediately just connected with this mother and son duo. And in fact, what I loved about Lori and Bryson's connection was how incredibly close they were. And Bryson was a few years older than Miro, and I was able to look into the future of how respectful parenting looked like, and how Miro at the time was only 12, but how it can look with a teen. And Lori and Bryson have been a great inspiration to me throughout my life over the past few years. So Bryson, I'm going to just read a little bit about Bryson, and this was published as a celebration of Bryson's life. Bryson was a beloved son, nephew, cousin, and expectant father, and a friend, and he passed away at the age of 23. Bryson was an inspiration to many who was loved and cherished by his family. He was also proud of his family and affected us all in innumerable ways. Bryson was expecting a baby girl in December, and he adored his daughter already. Bryson was a loving, gifted, brilliant, and creative young man who wanted to raise awareness about the traumas of child abuse and neglect, especially on behalf of boys, the neglected victims of sexual abuse. He believed people needed to hear about child abuse from a child's perspective. Bryson was a gifted vocalist, songwriter, artisan, rock climber, an avid tabletop gamer, and a role player who was in the process of creating his own tabletop game. Bryson was involved with many volunteer projects with the Seacoast community over the years. He was always in the act of creating something, whether it was a piece of music or a role-playing game or a piece of chainmail jewelry. His presence in the arts community of New Hampshire was beloved, and his absence, both in the arts and in everyone's personal friendships, will be keenly felt for the rest of our lives. So this is an honor to you, Bryson. We miss you, and our hearts break, and our hearts go out to you, Lori, who I can't even imagine what you're feeling. I do want to mention that there is a fund for the Couture family, which will help ease any of the costs, the memorial costs and the funeral expenses. And all the proceeds will go directly to the Couture family and assist Lori in the process and help her as she is grieving the loss of her son. Any additional contributions will go towards helping finalize the tabletop game that Bryson was inventing, and so his legacy will live on. So Bryson, thank you for being an inspiration in our community, and thank you for allowing us to share his memory. So thank you, and with that, we are out.
If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception. The world of free and independent media is growing, and with the upsurge in information now available in the public domain, it has never been easier to access free and independent media. The exploration of this information resulted in an experimental project which would provide a fully supported space for researchers, whistleblowers, and seekers of all kinds to express themselves and educate the world. On the 1st of January 2015, Conscious Consumer Network was launched to the world. Nobody thought we would make it this far, but CCN is the longest running free and independent media network of its kind. CCN is a unique collaboration of hearts and souls, bringing you information from different perspectives to educate and inform. Since we started CCN, we have had only one desire: the pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world, and this has not changed. Having overcome many challenges over the last 2 years, CCN is here to stay, and we've got great things lined up for 2017. Help keep CCN on the air by supporting the 2017 Network Support Fund.